ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك هو أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight we're going to be going over some of the first 5 verses of Surah Al Alaq, the 96th surah of the Quran Al-Kareem. In our previous lecture, we took the first 2 verses, which are after أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق الإنسان من علق. Read in the name of your Lord who created man from a clot. That's where we left off, and we took some of the meanings and some of the explanations of these verses and the relationship of Allah's rububiyyah to these verses, the relationship between the first and the second verse, and extracted some of the meanings of these verses. So today, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we are going to take verse number 3, hopefully verse number 3, 4, and 5, which are the first 5 verses that were revealed to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ while he was in the cave of Hira in Mecca. So the third verse of this surah is Allah Azza wa Jall's statement, Iqra wa rabbuka al-akram. Another command to read. Read, and your Lord is the most generous. So, subhanAllah, in the first verse, Allah ordered the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to read. And now, once again, in the third verse, Allah is ordering the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to read again. So why does Allah Azza wa Jal repeat the command to read again here? Allah knows best. But what came to my mind, a few reasons. First, to remind us about the importance of reading first and foremost, and that education and educating ourselves first and foremost is the first step in achieving any type of change in ourselves, in our families, in our societies, in our nations, in our countries. Reading about Allah, our Creator, the one we worship, reading about our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and reading about Islam. Also, to acquire and attain the knowledge we need to nourish our minds, our bodies, and souls through reading Allah's revelation, while pondering and reflecting over its deep meanings. 3. Acquiring knowledge through utilizing the senses that Allah has blessed us with to nourish our minds, bodies, and souls. 4th, just how our bodies need constant nutrients, food and exercise to keep them healthy, similarly our minds and souls need to learn and acquire new branches of knowledge and new information. The nutrients for our souls is revelation from Allah, is worship of Allah, remembrance of Allah, and acting upon this great deen of Islam. The nutrients for our minds is pondering over His revelation, the Quran and the authentic hadith, and pondering and reflecting over the signs that Allah places within His creation. So why does Allah repeat the command to read? And why does He use His same name? Or why does Allah He uses the name Rabb in both verses. And why does He use His name Al-Akram and not Al-Kareem? And what is the relationship between the order to read, the command to read, and Allah's name Al-Akram here in this verse? Allah knows best. And I would say that Allah repeats the order to read and the command to read in this third verse here to remind us not only about the importance of seeking knowledge, but also that the more we seek knowledge, the more Allah will increase us in it. The more Allah will increase our understanding and increase our guidance and increase all types of goodness. And Allah's name, Al-Akram, means the most generous. The most generous of all. And it is a superlative noun or adjective, meaning that there is no one or no thing that is more generous than Allah. Someone can be Kareem, but they cannot be Al-Kareem. No one can be Al-Akram. Only Allah, the most magnificent. So, the more one reads and seeks beneficial knowledge, the more that Allah will be generous with them. Then in verse number 4, Allah Azza wa Jalla goes on to say, الَّذِي عَلَّمَ بِالْقَلَمِ, who taught writing or who taught by the pen. And we all know from the means and avenues that Allah has bestowed upon human beings is to be able to acquire and convey knowledge by using the pen to write. With the pen, human beings can write down and record the observations that they learned and observed from utilizing the senses that Allah has bestowed upon them. With the pen, human beings can also write down and record the observations that are the results of one's thinking, reflecting, contemplating in their own experiences. Other people benefit from those observations and writings. As it is natural, all human beings' memories and intellects become weak the more they age. However, that which is written by the pen remains preserved and cannot be forgotten, and remains preserved or engraved in stone and recorded. Allah actually named a whole surah after the pen, Surah Al Alaq, showing us the importance of it. And we know that the pen was one of the first things that Allah created. And it wrote down everything that happened before us, while we're living now, and everything that will come after us. Mention of the pen here is strong evidence, as we mentioned previously in some of our previous lectures, that what was intended by read in the first verse was to read something that was written, and not reciting or only repeating something that was recited to him from the angel Jibreel. Wallahu a'lam, and Allah knows best. Then in verse number 5, Allah Azza wa Jalla, He goes on to say, عَلَّمَ الْإِنسَانَ مَا لَمْ يَعْلَمْ, that Allah taught the human being that which he did not know. So from the blessings that Allah bestowed upon human beings is teaching them everything. Starting with the father of mankind, Adam alayhi salam. Allah taught him the names of all of the creatures. And it is from Allah's grace and mercy upon us that He has given us senses to acquire knowledge. Human beings learn from many different things and ways. From reading that which was written by the pen, from observing their surroundings, from listening, from seeing, from tasting, from feeling and smelling, also from their inner emotions, their inner thoughts and feelings. All of these ways of learning were given to us from Allah the Most High. Feelings of love, dislike, anger, satisfaction, delight, pain, all of these feelings are based upon observations, knowledge acquired through our senses or experiences. If Allah didn't prepare us and give us faculties that we need to know Him, to recognize Him and His signs and worship Him, then He would have never placed us on this earth. If that was the case, then all human beings would have clean white slates, and they would be inanimate, non-intellectual, ignorant beings with no purpose in life. Everything that human beings acquire in this lifetime upon this earth is from Allah. From the best of things acquired in this world is religious knowledge. First and foremost, knowledge of Allah and His revelation. Then other types of knowledge that can be used as tools to help one maneuver correctly upon this earth, within the boundaries set by our Creator, and earn a living to support one's family. In these first 5 verses of this surah, Surah Al Alaq, it is as if Allah is progressively teaching us how to acquire the tools we need to rectify our situations, to find solutions to our problems and difficulties. Allah is telling us, first, read in the name of your Lord. Contemplate over yourself, your creation, and your role in life, where you came from. And keep educating yourself, and Allah will increase you. Then record and write down what you've acquired so that you can convey it and pass it on to others. These first 5 verses of Surah Al Alaq clarify for us the responsibility and obligation of learning the message of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam by reading and writing, while recording it and conveying it by writing as well. Now, the second part of this surah, verses numbers 6 through 8, which mention those who refuse to respond to the message and invitation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and those who refuse true iman and true faith, those who reject accepting Islam as their way of life, and Allah as their creator, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as their prophet and messenger. This second part of the surah tells us about those who think that they don't need Allah's revelation. They think that they can acquire everything they need in this life and the next life alone, and that they know right from wrong and can distinguish the truth from falsehood and organize their lives and learn how to behave and how to act properly by using their own intellects, their own experiences, and their own observations. So this part of the surah, verses number 6 through 8, it comes to refute this doubt and false claim. And this is clear by the first word Allah uses in the first verse of this part, verse number 6. Allah, He chooses to use a very harsh word, which is kalla. Kalla innal insana la yatagha. And this word kalla in the Arabic language is normally used to rebuke and admonish people who have done something wrong, who have thought something wrong. So here in this verse, kalla innal insana la yatagha, that nay, verily, human beings are constantly transgressing the limits. So in this verse, Allah wants to mention some general traits and behaviors of the human being. And He starts to mention one of the most deficient traits, which the majority of human beings fall into, which is transgression, tughyan. And tughyan, which means to exceed the limit or the boundaries set. And it can mean to exceed the limits or boundaries of truth and justice or goodness. They say in Arabic, طغى الماء أو طغى البحر. They say that if the ocean has risen above the land, or the river has risen above the land, or the waves have become extremely high and are causing floods or causing damage, they say taga al-ma. And also Allah, He talks about Fir'aun in the Quran. Taga Fir'aun. That Fir'aun transgressed the limits. So this verse here, verse number 6 of Surah Al Alaq, Kalla innal insana layatgha. This verse comes as an explanation and justification, clarifying why Allah sent down the Quran and sent down His revelations to His previous messengers. It is as if Allah is saying to us that if Allah didn't send down His revelation, with which people are able to distinguish between truth and falsehood, good and bad, wholesome and impure, and learn the correct path, then people would indeed transgress constantly and extremely and consider themselves to be independent of a creator. And there would be nothing that can stop those individuals from transgressing. And with the constant and unlimited transgression, you will find that one transgresses against everyone and everything, because there is nothing that can stop that individual or make them cease. And what does this do? This leads to people fighting and killing each other while denying other people's rights and proper treatment and proper behavior towards them. The person transgresses against his Lord, against himself, against other human beings, and against all of the creatures in creation. Then we find Allah mentioning in the next verse, in verse number 7, Ar-ra'ahu istaghna. When he considers himself to be independent and self-sufficient. So verily or nay, the human being constantly transgresses the limits when he considers himself to be independent and self-sufficient. He doesn't need a Lord. So this verse is directly related to the previous verse, verse number 6, and shows us that transgression is directly related to and the result of thinking that one is independent of his Lord and Creator, and he is independent of others, and not connected or related to the rest of the creation in some way, shape, or form. And the word istaghna in this verse, the origin of this word means to possess or own something that makes the owner free and independent from anyone and everything else. He doesn't need anyone or anything. And this self-sufficiency or independence can either be with wealth, authority, status, power, health and prosperity, followers and allies, or by owning everything that one needs. It is also by not needing anything that anyone else possesses or owns. However, this istighna can either be haqiqi, can either be real, or it can be fake. It can either be complete or partial independence. So what is the difference between the two? The real type of independence and complete and perfect independence and self-sufficiency is only for Allah alone. As Allah, He is as-samad. Allah is self-sufficient and independent from all things. Allah, He is the owner and possessor of everything. Allah's possession and ownership is complete, perfect, and eternal. As for human beings, then their possession of things is partial and only temporary. Perhaps someone could feel or perceive themselves as being independent or self-sufficient, but in reality, they are only lying to themselves. The one who feels as if they don't need Allah they don't need his revelation, they don't need his commands, is really the one who needs him the most and is really fooling himself. Not every human being transgresses, but the majority of human beings do transgress in some way, shape, or form. They either transgress against their Creator, against themselves, or against other human beings, or even against other creatures. However, everyone who believes himself to be free, independent, and self-sufficient of Allah definitely transgresses against others, against themselves, and against their Lord, knowingly or unknowingly. This reality amongst human beings shows us the importance of becoming familiar with Allah's revelation and guidance that He sent to us. So when someone transgresses and believes himself to be free and independent from all things, he is in need of something to remind him about the result of his transgression. And this is why Allah, He says in the final verse of this part, the second part of this surah, Inna ila rabbika ruja'a. Surely to your Lord is the return of all. So when the individual is constantly transgressing and believing himself to be independent and self-sufficient without a Lord who is watching him, without someone who will hold him accountable for his actions, this individual goes on constantly oppressing others, transgressing against others, taking their rights, and not caring who he harms or oppresses or transgresses against. So this individual is in need of a reminder that even though you may think that no one is aware of what you're doing, indeed Allah is watching and recording everything. And that individual may not get caught by the authorities or police here in this world. He may avoid punishment in this world, but punishment for transgression and wrongdoing will definitely and 100% absolutely be carried out in the hereafter. So let's reflect, brothers and sisters, over a few things that we have taken in these verses this evening. Why has Allah only used the word Rabb in all of these verses? Lord. Why not Ilah, the deity? And what is the difference between the two? Between Rabb and Ilah? And what is the relationship between these verses and in these verses in using the word Rabb? Some of the things that came to my mind was a tarheeb. You know, throughout the Quran, Allah uses these usloob, these different techniques to nurture and train the hearts of His slaves. Targheeb wa tarheeb. Encouragements and discouragements. So the word Rabb is usually used for tarheeb, to instill fear into the hearts of the servants of Allah, and to realize the magnificence and power of this great and magnificent Creator. Another thing that came to mind was a reminder of the one who bestows all of these things upon all of the creation. Also to remind us of many of the traits related to Allah's rububiyyah, to Allah's lordship. So the second part of this surah, verses numbers 6 through 8, they're basically reminding human beings, telling them, O you who is turning away from Allah and His message, read so that you can come back to Allah and His guidance. And woe to you who is denying this invitation of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This Lord who created everything in the creation, and you are a creature from amongst his creation who passed through many stages of development throughout your life, starting from a despised fluid to a blood clot to flesh and to bones. You need to wake up and worship your Creator. And O you who are transgressing and viewing yourself to be self-sufficient and independent, what is making you so arrogant? And what is driving you to oppress other people? Also, the numerous blessings, sustenance, wealth, provisions that you have been given in your life have made you think that you are rich, wealthy, and independent. Did you do all of that by yourself? Do you think that you're self-sufficient with the tools and means that you have been given by your Lord? But you may have forgotten that you have been granted these things, and it may be a test from Allah the Most High. So the third and final part of the surah, which starts from verse number 9 and continues on until the end of the surah, mentions a few different types of people in regards to accepting or rejecting the message of the prophets, and specifically the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these are 4 types of people. And bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, we're going to discuss those 4 types of people in our upcoming lesson of the tafsir of Surah Al Alaq. So we will see you next week for another lecture. May Allah bless all of you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.